When the weather gets cool outside, there is nothing that warms me up more, at least, than a nice hot bowl of soup.
Official Mass Appeal chef Greg Monette from Chandler's restaurant in South Deerfield joins us in the kitchen with his recipe for apple cider butternut bisque. Greg, great to have you back in the kitchen.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
It's always nice to have you here. So this sounds like a really yummy bisque
It
recipe.
is, and this is really a staple at Chandler's throughout the fall, and we serve a lot of butternut bisque as a side dish for a lot of our entrees at lunch and dinner. And but we also, I think people really like the apple and cider and butternut bisque. Today we're using actually I think it's a not necessarily we don't
Some
know
kind of squash.
but
That's
very
fun,
similar.
though, yeah.
Fun
It's this
gourd.
that we're using.
Yep.
Pumpkin
Gourd squash.
It looks like it tastes good.
But a lot of the winter squashes are interchangeable. Some have, subtle differences. Some are nuttier, some are sweeter. The butternut is actually sweeter than when you go to like the acorn or the Hubbard. You get like a nuttier flavor and all that. And even the spaghetti squash is a little nuttier too. So but this is perfect.
So the first thing you do is you core up the squash. Is that right?
Yes, you'd want to get all your prep done ahead of time. So we'd have celery and carrots, some leeks. One thing with leeks, we cut them all up and then rinse them through the colander, because in the folds or the layers of all the onion there, it traps a lot of dirt from the rain. It kicks up the ground around it while it grows, and so it's just a good way to clean it out really quickly.
So you cut it then
Good.
clean it.
That's why
Yep.
it's
That'll be the first thing we put in the pot actually while we start.
How do you cut the squash? Do you peel the sides?
Yep, the easiest thing to do is chop the top and bottom off, just like you would a cantaloupe or honeydew melon.
Okay.
And then just run your knife around the contour of the curve of the squash.
Cool.
And did you have oil in that pot?
I had a little bit of oil, but we're adding the secret ingredient, which is butter.
Are you going to share it? Okay.
It's
Can
a
you
good
tell us
hunk
the
of
secret?
butter.
Yeah.
There we go.
So this, we'll turn down the heat a little bit. So we're sautéing these.
Get a whiff of that.
I can
this
whip
actually
it all the way over here. It smells
Just
so
to
good.
start. And these are aromatic vegetables always. Celery, onion, carrot.
Oh gosh, it
really,
smells so good.
And it's the base of most soups, really. It really kind of just, if you don't have stock, it's going to help really flavor the liquid that you use, which is usually water, in that case. But today we have actually chicken stock. And so, once we get these sauteing, we want the onions to wilt just a little bit. The carrot and the celery, it's going to cook in the stock, more so, and develop more flavors and all that. And then we add our squash too. They'll cook about the same time as the carrots will, because they're the densest vegetables basically in the pot. So.
Now, how do you know when all this is done cooking? Is there a consistency, a color?
It's if you can poke your fork through it, and it's nice and tender, and or it flakes apart, then it's done. And you don't want to let it go too long, because then it gets mushy, and really you're kind of like you're cooking out a lot of the flavor too. It just evaporate with the steam. So basically stir all this together. We would have salt and pepper here too, fresh thyme. In the recipe I wrote sage, but with sage I like to add it at the end, more in like the last 10-15 minutes, because you want to really kind of adjust it. Start with a little bit, but if you really like sage, add a little bit more towards the end too. Because sage is really powerful. Thyme is a little less.
Right,
so.
you can always add more, but you can't take it out.
Exactly.
Oh, I just want to get a whiff of this.
That smells great, especially when you kind of pick it and unleash the scent of it.
One thing with the fresh herbs too is you want to bruise it. You don't really want to cut it. That it releases the oils a lot quicker, and you'll get a lot more oils out of it. When you cut it, you're kind of cauterizing it.
Oh, I never knew that.
It'll take a lot longer for the oils to release.
So how do you bruise it? You just kind of
just
pull
with your
on
fingers, just squeeze it between your fingers. Same thing with rosemary. That's one you would use a lot in soup preparations too.
And this is a great time of year to go to Chandler's too, because of the foliage. It's just so beautiful up there with all of the flowers.
Oh no, definitely.
And everything.
We really, it's our time of year up there, and we have the foliage, we have the backdrop. So there's the beauty of New England, and then we also have really just a premier place for families with Yankee Candle. All throughout the fall, we're going to have sleigh rides around the property. Paint your pumpkin with Santa Claus.
Santa's paint pumpkin.
Yeah,
I love it.
There's always so much going on around Yankee
And the
Candle
Wind Down
Chandler's.
Wednesdays too. Those are going to be a lot of fun.
That's something we're kicking off within the next 2 weeks. We're going to offer really a selection of wines from our wine cellar, which is arguably probably the best wine cellar in the region. We've been recognized by Wine Spectator every year for at least the past, I'd say, 6-7 years. Don't quote me on that. It's probably longer than that. But you know, it's really it's an award that, you know, we basically strive for every year by changing our wine menu, keeping it current and fresh, and also incorporating like a, you know, an education program for our staff as well as our customers. We don't want people to be intimidated when they come in. We want them to try new things, sample things. We have extensive amount of wines by the glass, and at least 30 right now. And you know, with our Wine Down Wednesdays, it's 50% off, a selection of at least 10 bottles every week, and we're going to pair appetizers with them as well. So.
Not bad.
Yeah.
And you can get this butternut bisque, apple cider butternut bisque, too.
Exactly, exactly.
So the next step here is really nothing. You just sit and wait for a while, right?
Well, you sit and wait, and you know, of course, we want to also add
the cider.
our cider.
That's one of the magic ingredients.
Right. And this is going to simmer for about 35-40 minutes at the most. Just test it as you go along, depending upon what size you chopped up your vegetables.
Well, hey, do you mind sticking around, finishing this up so we can taste it?
Not at all.
Later?
Well, I brought some, I brought some with me so we can plate it, and I'll show you how we display it at the restaurant.
All right. Well, hey, Greg, thanks so much, and don't you go anywhere because we'll be back in just a few with Greg finishing up our soup.
We're back in the kitchen with official Mass Appeal chef Greg Monette from Chandler's Restaurant to finish up his recipe for apple cider butternut bisque.
So, Greg, catch us up here. Now, you're putting apples into the mixture.
I am, and it's one thing we left out earlier, mainly because we don't want the apples to cook too much. So towards the end of the cooking process, we throw the apples in. Again, we can go back to like using the sage, just so, you know, towards the end, just to see how the profile of the flavors develop. And I brought a batch with me earlier.
Thank you.
We prepared
for
this yesterday. And so it's, you know, soup the second day is always better. So I thought you guys would appreciate
true.
it.
But now what you did is once all of that simmers together, then you basically...
Well, you puree it in either a food processor, blender, or an immersion blender, one of the handheld ones.
I love
that
those.
you can get for probably like $30 somewhere. So
When do you add the cream, Greg?
cream is right at the end when you're finishing it up.
So after you use the immersion blender?
Yep, exactly. Right when you're about to serve it. So.
Ooh, this smells so good. Here you go, Ashley.
Oh my goodness! I feel
And
like
now, Greg, when you plate
we're
it,
gonna finish this though.
a sprig of thyme, perhaps?
Yep, well, a sprig of thyme would be nice.
All right, here you go.
a sprig of thyme.
Look at that.
We made a creme fraiche, which you can buy or you can make yourself by using whole milk and a few tablespoons of buttermilk. Let it sit out overnight, and the good bacteria in here overpowers the bad bacteria that could potentially grow, and it thickens it up, and it just makes really it's like a savory sour cream. And
So we shouldn't
love
be
sour cream.
we shouldn't be afraid of this bacteria.
not at all.
All right. I like it.
I'm eating it. I don't care if it's good or bad. I'm eating it.
Right.
You can tell me it's bad.
And the last
It's good for me.
last thing we're gonna do.
Oh, we're not
I just
even
wanna
done.
eat it.
Oh.
We'll do this with ours, not Ashley's.
Okay, good.
No, it's
yeah,
okay.
Ash,
I
why
can
don't
wait.
you eat?
I can wait.
Now, Greg,
Just gonna
It's
garnish
okay.
with a little bit of cider reduction.
No, I want to wait for that.
So what we did, we took
Cider reduction.
Yep, took a couple cups of cider and reduced it by at least 3/4 here.
And that's just putting it on
it's a
really
nice
low
little
heat
syrup.
for a really long time.
Now,
Exactly.
Greg, what kind of wine could I? Well, obviously, I'm expecting I shouldn't be drinking wine. But if I wanted
Right.
to
If you were drinking
serve
wine.
it to someone, what kind of wine would you pair it with?
Let's see. Well, I would do Sauvignon Blanc or even a Riesling. Depending upon how savory your soup is, if it's really sweet, then go with a dry Riesling or the Sauvignon Blanc. But I like the sweet Rieslings. I really like the dry Riesling, so I would stick with that no matter what, really. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, if you can enjoy that with this, I'm sure that would be an award-winning combination.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you,
definitely.
Greg.
Thanks so
thank
much
you
for
guys.
stopping by.
Thank
Ash,
you very
you finish
much.
this up, I'm going to start
I'll
eating.
finish it up and then I'll eat too. Well, you can get this recipe online by visiting mymassappeal.com. Just click on Taste Appeal. You can also go to Chandler's Restaurant and try it for yourself. Be sure to always keep an eye out for Mass Appeal chef Greg Monette, who joins us every other Thursday with a delicious seasonal dish from Chandler's Restaurant.